יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יא לי 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 לי. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יא לי 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 לי. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, יא לי 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 לי. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Shabbat Shalom. We are so pleased to gather with you to mark Shabbat, to mark this Shabbat morning. If you would like to join with us in prayers from our prayer sheet, you can access the few pages of prayer and Torah study text that we'll get to in a few minutes. They can be found in the Facebook feeds. They can also be found on the NSCI website if you go to the resources for Shabbat. As we join together, Cantor Goldstein and I, of course, invite you to join with us as much as you are able. For some, that still can feel strange as you're maybe in your own space by yourself, but we encourage you to sing with us, to speak with us, and at moments to add your thoughts, comments, questions as we go through. We turn to page 1 of our Shabbat Morning Experience sheet, and I invite you, if you wish, to join with me. Matter is never destroyed, only transformed. So too can the soul evolve higher and higher, from instinct to inspiration, haughtiness to holiness, selfishness to service, from individualism to union, to join with the soul of souls, the infinite one. As the soul is magnified and sanctified, so is the infinite one exalted. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light-blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us. We climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai habocher ba'amo Yisrael b'ahava. We praise you, God, who gives us love, gives us teachings and Torah with your love. We turn to Shema.
Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני Adonai Elohechem, asher הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We continue on page 2 together. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness. Restrain our thirst for excess and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy. And we continue with gratitude. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. As we go from gratitude to peace, think about the things we are grateful. Just said this blessing of gratitude, and we pray to peace, the vessel that encloses, incorporates, that holds all blessings. We sing together.
Ose shalom bimromav, le'ase shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru, Amen.
We turn to study. Study that turns us obviously, or not to the weekly Torah portion, but turns us, I think, quite powerfully this week as well to the time of our days, particularly at this crazy time in our world. I invite you to join me with the bracha, the blessing for Torah study on the top of page 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, our God, who has sanctified us, lifted us up through commandments to engage in the study of Torah. So you'll see in your packet pages, text from this week. This is, I guess I say this a lot, part of going with the territory of what I do with my days, but this is one of my favorite Torah portions. And admittedly, there are a couple people in my house who are studying this Torah portion with Cantor Goldstein these days as they prepare for B'nai Mitzvah, because this Torah portion is read on Shabbat in the Torah reading cycle, and it is also read as we turn to our festivals. It is one of those portions that we read more than once during the year, and that is because of its content. The Torah portion is a more, and a more includes one of 3 recitations of the holiday cycle, of the holiday calendar of our people. And so it lists Shabbat, Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot, not Shavuot by name, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, lists the holidays that were in effect at biblical times. You don't then have Purim and Hanukkah, for example. And it also talks about this period of counting, that we should number the days between Passover and Shavuot, that period we call the Omer. What I'd like to focus on today is just the very first 2 verses of Leviticus 23. God spoke to Moses saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, these are my fixed times, the fixed times of the Lord, which you shall proclaim as sacred occasions." So as Cantor Goldstein and I have looked at these texts, and those of us who studied them before know that this is a tension in this opening verses of the portion that I just love. because it says these are set times given us by God, but it's on us to make sacred or holy. Goldstein, I wish in some ways we were sitting in the Perlman, for many ways, reasons, but particularly with these verses, we were sitting in the Perlman sanctuary right now, right? We would be surrounded by those four walls, each of which have a biblical citation talking about or including the word kadosh or holy. Because holiness, as we know, is about God, but it's also what we aspire to. So the challenge in this commandment is that the people are given the times are set, but they need to do something about it. So what's interesting then, it goes to that, what is that question? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, will it make noise?
Sound.
Yeah. So I always come to that. Like if the holidays are there and we don't do anything about them, are they really there, right? So Nachmanides lifts up, if you look at the first piece of commentary, lifts up the idea that we should proclaim them as sacred occasions and says they are occasions of calling, in which everyone is called to gather and sanctify them. And then Nachmanides lifts up a text that is familiar to many of us because it's part of the Haftarah on Rosh Hashanah. He says, it is in fact a commandment for all Jews to gather in the house of God on festival days in fresh clothing. I laughed when I read that part. I'll go back to it. To sanctify them publicly with prayer and praise God, and to make them days of feasting. For our tradition applies Ezra's words on Rosh Hashanah to all the festivals in general. Ezra's words are, go eat choice foods and drink sweet drinks and send portions to whoever has nothing prepared, for the day is holy to our Lord. So Nachmanides lifts up, what are we supposed to do for holidays? I laughed about the clean clothing comment because how many people, I don't know what you're seeing, Ken or Goldstein, but my friends and people I see on Facebook are saying, oh yeah, I changed from my sweatpants to my other pajamas or things like that when they're talking about the sameness of our days. And he lifts up food and, and sending portions to those who have nothing prepared, meaning taking care of those who are in need. So he's applying that to the three festivals. Abarbanel then lifts up and says, well, they're sacred to the Lord, these festivals, whether we do anything about it, going to that tree in the forest. And then Sforno, one more text down, says, well, we're supposed to study to make these days sacred. So I don't know. I'm thinking about this a lot. I've heard so many people talk about the sameness of our days.
Well, it strikes me that this is what really differentiates the book of Leviticus from what we heard in the book of Exodus. So when we were about to build the tabernacle, before we were allowed to build, the first thing that we heard was, don't forget that is as important basically as building the tabernacle is, you have to stop for Shabbat. But it didn't necessarily, other than that it was a cessation of work, it didn't go into what made it holy, other than the differentiation from all those other days working and then not working on Shabbat. And we had some idea, but the entire book of Leviticus, from the very beginning, we get the word Vayikra, where that Moses was called. We get the centerpiece that we just had last week with Kedoshim, with the laws of holiness and what it means to be holy. And we look forward to next week where we have this conclusion of the book where at the very end it says these are the laws and these are the commandments that you're to do, and so here we are in the book, in this portion of Emor, where there's some specificity around the notion of what it means to be holy, to create holiness, and it ups the ante a bit for us, which I think is quite lovely.
It's beautiful, right? It ups the ante, and it also gives us guidance, right? Like, how do I do this? And this comes from a time that our ancestors didn't have that structure, right? They were being given the structure. We have it. We as Reformed Jews choose where we choose ideally what's meaningful, right? And and we're given some guidance, right? Okay, eat, we're pretty good with that. studying Torah. For some, that's a more natural pursuit or not. Taking care of those in need, lifting up the joy. And we go one step further. I'm not going to read this entire excerpt from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, but it is exquisite, and I'm giving it to you all to reflect on. But he what did I just was going to say something and I forgot. He lifts up the fact that we need those reminders, and that also that doing these and marking these occasions gives us a piece of our story. And he says we all need an identity, and every identity comes with a story. And then he continues, so we need a time to remind ourselves of the story of where we came from and why we are who we are. Well, we certainly just had that in Passover, right? In Passover, fascinating always that it is the most observed Jewish holiday in whatever way people mark it. I tend to think it's because it connects to our identity, besides that the food's really good and you get together with families. He continues that we need a moral code reminding us, the 10 commandments on Shavuot, and I'm not saying it at all with his beautiful language. He said we need a regular reminder of the brevity of life itself. That comes up with Rosh Hashanah in the Book of Life. He said we need a time when we confront our faults and apologize for the wrongness we've done. Yom Kippur. And he says we need to remind ourselves that we're on a journey, that we are sojourners on earth, and that so much of our lives is temporary. This being Sukkot, right? What do we do on Sukkot? We're to live in Sukkot, in a sukkah, reminding us that this is all fragile. And then he says from time to time, we need to step back from the ceaseless pressures of our work and find the rest in which we can celebrate our blessings, renew our relationship, and recover the full vigor of body and mind. This is Shabbat. Yes, these holidays are there. And there's an interesting time in our lives right now to stop and reflect on them. I mean, he is very much, he's giving us the space to do it, but he concludes this is why they have to be on the diary, not just on the to-do list. That doesn't always happen. I feel like there's an opportunity here, right? I mean, Kiana Goldstein, you and I and Rabbi Geffen and Rabbi Daniels have heard from different members of our community who have acknowledged that it may not be their usual thing to plug in, as it were, to Shabbat services, but we've heard some beautiful messages of people saying that this gives them markers of time, right? We had a beautiful note that said it creates normalcy and a milestone for the week, in which there's this ongoing or never-ending sameness. I see people before Shabbat posting pictures of there's a run on yeast, right? We've all seen this in the newspapers, and how many people are baking challah. I'm not saying everyone should bake challah, but if you want to, how many people are lifting up different pieces of Shabbat? How many people were doing Zoom Seders? Whatever that is, there's an acknowledgement that these are sacred times. And we have in them a piece of our identity. Just making me think about the days that right now are particularly undifferentiated and how we can lift those up.
I think too, embedded in this first part of Amur is this notion of you have the identification of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and you see that Rosh Hashanah is a Yom HaZikaron. It is a day of remembrance, and that is a two-way sort of operation. It's we need to remember God, but we're asking God to remember us, and there is an act, there is something that links those two in particular in the text, and that is the ish. The Aish, not the Ish, the Aish, that is to be brought, the fire offering that's to be brought to Adonai. And it's this notion that we have this obligation to bring something of ourselves, and something that is not of the earth, but it goes up. So it goes up, and which is sort of this notion of God being up there somewhere. But it's this notion that we in order to achieve this link, this connection to holiness, we have to offer something of ourselves, and we have to engage in these things at the appointed times. We can't just do it randomly, as we saw with Nadav and Avihu a few portions back. When you do it at the wrong time or in the wrong way, not so good. And so here we are, where we're getting some specifics around, well, what is it we're supposed to do? But it's not always just the what, it's that we are obliged to do it. And I think we often bristle at the notion of obligation, but there's something beautiful in how obligation lifts us up. And when we fulfill the obligation, that it becomes very meaningful, and you begin to feel the connection, the rootedness, all of which I think are implicit in the observance and the remembering of this cycle of the festivals of the holy days.
Yes, that was beautiful. We do bristle. I mean, in the world in which we live, we often bristle at the sense of something that is obligatory. But yeah, you said it. It's not always the what, it's the that. You made me think about something else too, as you lifted up the idea of the practice of our ancestors of making sacrifices, right? For them, it was the fire and making the offerings. We're no longer making those physical sacrifices. I've told many a bar bat mitzvah student, well, we don't do that. We would trash the carpet and the white carpet in the large sanctuary just to get a laugh out of a 13-year-old. But the idea that, within that, wasn't that funny. But within that is the notion of change too, right? We don't observe our holidays in the exact same way as they were observed in biblical times or even a century ago, but some of those pieces are key, are core, right? I mean, the Seder as described, it's not even a Seder in Torah. The Passover observance is, you make unleavened bread and you eat it with bitter herbs and you eat it with a roasted lamb. Some of us still eat lamb, okay. But that there's change within that. So it's the that, and it's the that then that can evolve with it at the same time as we're anchored. And there's something to the that. I think there's actually something to committing to us. As you may or may not know, Cantor Goldstein, knowing someone who's in our adult B'nai Mitzvah class, I've challenged our adult B'nai Mitzvah class as we've been studying prayer to add prayer to their lives, to add even one prayer a day. And if they forget a day, okay, but to add a piece. And we've had some really interesting conversations about adding a piece of prayer to your day and giving yourself an anchor in that. So I encourage all of us to.
Well, and to Rabbi Green, you have talked on numerous occasions and quite eloquently about how we can mark moments in our lives beyond the ones that are prescribed here in the text, and create ritual that can bring meaning to our lives by doing something, by creating a ritual and doing it, and following the flow of it, and there's a transformation that takes place as a result. You move from whether it's pain to some sense of healing, whatever it is, there is a change that takes place. Similar, I might add, to the change that takes place when you offer the Eish. It starts as something, and as it's consumed in flames, it changes. It's altered. And I think that there's perhaps a metaphor in that for us.
I would take out perhaps. There is a metaphor that in terms of change, and in terms of the fact that we don't necessarily know what that change will be or what that action will be. You and others have heard me speak about ritual I created around the ritual, my divorce. And as I was trying to create that, I didn't know what it was going to be. And I wrestled with getting the right thing. Right? And it was finally a dear, wise friend of mine, Rabbi Andrea Weiss, who said, you'll know. And I did in the moment. And it's trusting that even if we don't think we know, we can know something. And we just need to start doing it. We as rabbis and Cantor have seen a lot of fascinating doing in terms of even what we've seen over Zoom in the last few weeks, right? I've sat on a Beit Din with Rabbi Daniels as we have had conversion student teaching. We've seen weddings. You know, I'm naming a baby next week, and then there are things that are in the sort of more standard things, but we're recreating how we're doing those as well as marking other moments. So I invite everyone who's with us on the text page. I'm not going to look at the Heschel text, which is right below it, but I invite you to take time with that later. I'll just say that as we often cite Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, he lifts up the fact that we Jews create our cathedrals in time. We mark sanctification. Sure, we mark holy space, but we particularly mark it in time. And the first thing that we have done that our ancestors did with Torah and that's written in Torah is the holiness of time, which is the holiness of Shabbat, which harkens back, Kendra Goldstein, to your talking about the tabernacle, that before our ancestors created the biblical home for God, they stopped and marked the sanctity of time or the sanctity of space. And I leave you with one more piece of text. This is a beautiful, teeny little piece from Rabbi Lawrence Hoffman, who taught Cantor Goldstein and me and Rabbi Daniels and Rabbi Gaffin and Rabbi Mason at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. And Rabbi Hoffman is a scholar of liturgy and ritual. He is the teacher who taught me that I could create ritual and mark moments in new ways. And so while we have in the Torah portion this week set times that we're given to make holy in both traditional ways and our own ways, Rabbi Hoffman reminds us that we have the ability to make meaning in all sorts of moments, in the small moments of our lives too. I'm going to actually read his words because there is no one more eloquent than him. Life is very much the process of connecting the disparate dots of daily events that befall us. These dots may be ordinary or monumental, planned or unexpected, joyous or disappointing, elating or tragic. Judaism accords these ordinary affairs absolute reality. Jewish insight argues all reality is local. What did you and I do yesterday? How will I react to a specific challenge tomorrow? Did I notice the early garden crocuses that herald spring? These are the events without which no life exists at all. They are our dots. Life is what we get when we string them together. The shape of life is not a given. It is what we make of it. So we have these set times on the Jewish calendar, and we have the times of our lives. We're in certainly a time that we can't predict and haven't been able to predict, but I do believe wholeheartedly that I don't suggest offering sacrifices by fire in your living room. It's probably not the best idea, but I think we can lift that metaphor up of transformation and transformation through the small moments. Marking holidays, we're not quite at Shavuot, but we have Shabbat. Marking meals with hamotzi, just stopping for those few seconds to say the blessing of gratitude, or making up your own blessing as you notice gratitude. In the last bunch of weeks, we've all spent so much time focusing on the unknown and the challenge and the worry. I invite everyone to think about that which we are grateful and that which are the miracles, small and large. And let us individually and together shape the dots of our lives, the times given to us and the times given to us in Torah and the times given to us in the days of our lives. May we gain strength from one another. May we create holiness through our offerings, and may we, through our offerings, through our actions and words, create transformation. Thanks. When we turn from meaning to memory, they go together. Perhaps that's my slip of the tongue there. We remember. And as we remember, we give meaning to our days as we remember those who came before us, those who died recently, and those who died at the season in years past. Do we remember what they taught us? We remember how they lived, how they acted, how they spoke. Remember how they gave meaning to our lives. Even the act of saying Kaddish together, which we'll do after we hear the names of our dear ones, that too gives us meaning as it connects us throughout time and space, certainly across the generations. This Shabbat, we remember those for whom we mourn in the period of Shloshim, those who died in the last month. Rebecca Edelman, Marjorie S. Barron, Gordon Cohn, Dr. Alan Don, Doris Ginsburg, Dr. Lawrence Gotkin, Betty J. Betts Handmacher, Jerome Harris, Alan Horowitz, Harriet Murch, Thomas Miller, Merle Rose, Laura Stern, Rosalind Claire Hartevelt Stern, Bernice Lillian Bunny Wallace, Mary Jane Wiersch, Susan Zucro. And we remember those whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of whose death, fall this week. Tova Miriam Aminoff, Dottie Martin Applebaum, Jev Baskin, Nathan B. Biederman, Marcy Berkey, Albert Branner, Fritzy Brody, Helen Brodkin, Rose S. Cable, Ben Heffetz, Martin Schukerman, Fred Cohn, Judith Katz Cohn, Rita S. Cohn, Ann Cole, Kenneth R. Cowan, Belle Goodkind Eichengreen, Leonard Eisman, Byron Epstein, Edward Finder, Eric Henry Framberg, Michael Stephen Gurchinson, Ida Gladstone, Florence Gold, Rose Goldston, Joyce Blum Goodman, Manya Ray Gross, Tom Handwerker, Sherman Harris, Marlene Hefter, Michael Stanley Heiser, George Hill, Louis M. Hirsch, Sarah Hirsch, Lee C. Hunter, Betty Woolman Javinsky, Charlotte Marcia Johnson, Leona Kahn, James Kaplan, Herman Cass, Samuel Kirsten, Irving Keim, Francis Kirschbaum, Andrew Klein, Amalia Cookie Kleinman, Norma Korn, Mary Kramer, Sophie Kravitz, Darren Latimer, Mildred Levine, Dora Leibovitz, Donna Levin, Beatrice Lieberman, Hyman London, Sybil Maggot, Miriam Marins, Harry Moos, Johanna Newberger, Mildred E. Pallas, Joanne Pekin, Huntley Joseph Ryan, David Richmond, Saul David Rigler, Rose Berman Robinson, Libby Robinson Ross, Merle Rufa, Molly Sandman, Stuart R. Shire, J. Meyer Shine, Harold D. Schwartz, Max Schwartz, Arthur H. Seltzer, Emmanuel Shapira, Elaine N. Sherman, Irving Small, Lita Spack, Bella Spear, Joe Stern, Henry A. Stein, Hyman Strom, Phyllis Thaler, Stuart B. Walzer, Louis A. Weiss, Evelyn Williams, Evelyn Wiss, Shirley Wolf, Seymour Zimmerman. Zichronam Livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing. I invite you to join with me for Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayachon uv'yomeichon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Bagala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'rechu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God, who makes peace in the heavens, grant peace and comfort to all of us who mourn here on earth. We say, amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, אמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Shabbat Shalom. Please join us later today at 7:30 this evening. We will be streaming Havdalah. Happen to know the three people leading it have been working hard and are excited to share their voices and join with our community. On Sunday, please watch for our schedule for the week, which you'll see in our various spots on our website, on our Facebook page, and in your email. And we look forward to gathering with you in all these ways, virtual though still real. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.